Less than 24 hours after UFC lost Max Holloway to a concussion, light heavyweight champion Daniel Cormier tripped over a speaker and fell to the ground at the pre-fight news conference. Cormier is set to take on Stipe Miocic in a battle between champions at the main event of UFC 226. We need a little more insight into all of that as we go. So let's bring in Brett Okamoto, our MMA insider. And so, Brett, UFC breathing a sigh of relief after the fall yesterday. What are you hearing about his circumstance?
Yeah, I think everybody is breathing a sigh of relief. You know, what he did was the UFC puts speakers up on that stage because they like to have the fans come in. So the fans come in, it's a great atmosphere, but sometimes the fighters up there are like, they can't hear the reporters' questions. So they put those speakers up there so they can hear our questions, but then DC tripped over that speaker, and it was loud. I mean, he fell over. I don't know if the speaker fell over or it was just the sound of his body hitting the floor, but it sounded terrible. He limped off the stage. But I talked to his team about a half an hour later. He wasn't happy about it. Nobody likes falling over right before they're about to get in a cage fight with a heavyweight champion of the UFC. But he said he banged his knee. He iced it a little bit. I'm going to see him this morning at the weigh-in. He's got to step on the scale, and hopefully he'll be doing fine, and it won't bother him in the fight, hopefully.
Absolutely. And because you were talking about a super fight of two heavyweight champions here, one of the most anticipated fights that they've had in an awful long time. So what are you, assuming that he's healthy and fine, what are you expecting? What should we look for in the fight?
Yeah, you know, this fight is as all fights are, it's a lot about distance. And it's also a heavyweight fight. So defense is important just because you can't take too many shots. I mean, just physics say the big guys with 4-ounce gloves, you can't take too many shots to the chin. Otherwise, the fight is going to end very quickly. But DC, he's a smaller guy. You know, he's moving up from the light heavyweight division. He's also just smaller in stature. He's facing a height disadvantage. He's facing a reach disadvantage. So he's going to be trying to work his way into the inside the entire fight. And for Stipe, so you have to prevent that. You have to use your footwork. You have to keep him at bay. You have to land some punches that back him off. If DC gets into the inside of Stipe and is able to take him down, wear him out, then it could be Cormier's fight to win.
All right, so this is tomorrow night. Now, you've also, I know, been talking with Conor McGregor's trainer, John Kavanagh. We had Dana on yesterday who said he has not had any contact with McGregor at all since the incident at Barclays. When are you expecting to see McGregor back in the Octagon?
I am optimistic that we are going to see Conor McGregor this year, and maybe that's foolish of me. You know, back when he was fighting Floyd Mayweather last August, we were hearing Dana say that he was going to fight by the end of the year, that this guy wanted to come back in the Octagon by the end of the year. And now here we are in July, and there's been no update as to when he's going to fight. But the UFC has a great fight for him. Khabib Nurmagomedov, he was the undefeated Russian who was in that bus that Conor McGregor attacked back in April. You get a situation like that, you can sell a whole lot of tickets. So you've got a mega fight. You've got arguably the biggest fight in the history of the UFC. You have Conor McGregor wanting to come back, is what John Kavanagh has told me. He's been in the gym recently. Obviously, the UFC wants him back. I had heard that they were even keeping the door open as early as September, that they wanted him back in September. They didn't have a pay-per-view event in Las Vegas in September, but maybe they would just make one. Maybe they would move one around just so they could get him back. If I was a betting man, I do think we will see Conor McGregor fight Khabib Nurmagomedov in October. But we have to see, first off, what happens with that court case. He's next scheduled in July 26th. I think if he gets a plea deal, fingers crossed, we'll see Conor McGregor in October.
Okay, and then one more we wanted to bring up with you here. We've shown Ronda Rousey a bit this morning. She was the first woman ever inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame last night. In 2011, Dana White said women would never fight in the UFC, and he said last night in the speech, I had never met Ronda Rousey. How significant is this achievement for Rousey, and how would you describe her standing and status at UFC?
Yeah, it was obviously very significant for the point that you just brought up, and that was the theme of the night, really, is just the barriers that Ronda Rousey broke down. I mean, as far as being inducted into the Hall of Fame, I think she's achieved things far greater than that, but it really kind of just symbolized and stood for everything that she had accomplished. And becoming the first woman in the UFC Hall of Fame, becoming that woman who broke down those barriers and became the first woman in the UFC, you know, there were active female fighters in the crowd last night watching that acceptance speech who had tears in their eyes. They were crying about it. And don't get me wrong, I do think women would have competed in the UFC with or without Ronda Rousey, but it would have taken a lot longer. It would have been a harder fight to get that attention, to draw it away from the men, to step out of the men's spotlight. When Rousey came in, she did that immediately. She was headlining cards. She was the sport's biggest star, and she set them on a path, and now they can be successful without her.